Welcome to GovCon Unscripted, where we dive into the unfiltered stories and strategies from all around the world of government contracting. Join host Chelsea Roberts as she explores how to navigate, thrive, and win in this complex but lucrative industry.
All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to GovCon Unscripted. I'm your host, Chelsea Roberts, CEO and founder of Collaborative Compositions. And today I've got with us Al Vega, CEO and founder of Clerco. Al, who are you and what do you do?
Thanks, Chelsea. I appreciate you having me on. So I'm essentially my background is very diverse as far as recruiting and staffing in the government contracting space. I've done everything from recruiting in the cleared arena, from public trust all the way to full scope polygraph, technical, non-technical roles, and also everything in between. And then I've focused really the last 4 to 6 years on the strategic sourcing piece of recruiting, which is more the hunt of finding the talent within government contracting. So it's a very interesting space. Maybe something that gets overlooked a little bit because we always talk about the capture, we talk about BD, and then we talk about what are we going to do to recruit these people for the services. So glad to be talking to you today, Chelsea. Thank you very much.
And this right now, especially, is an imperative conversation to have. Folks are looking for talent. Folks are coming out into the market as new talent. And so it's a very interesting time for the GovCon recruiting and staffing space. How do you approach finding people for a project?
So I guess it depends really, right? So if we're talking a proposal type of project for government contracting, then it's often what I refer to as hypothetical recruiting because you're not recruiting for something that's really active yet. So that's an interesting it's an interesting approach that you have to take to proposal recruiting. It's because you're really looking for talent and you have to be upfront with the candidates and let them know this is not an active requisition that we have, but in the event that we win this proposal work, would you be interested in being part of the team? And so a lot of times candidates who understand the government proposal world or they've been around it for a while, they understand that it's to their advantage actually to say yes to that because they can actually sign what's called a letter of intent, an LOI, with more than one company. So if they sign it with 2 or 3 different companies and one of them wins, then they have a higher chance of being part of that project. So on the other side, if you're recruiting for an active contract that's fully funded and you just need that skill set, that position there, then it just becomes a full cycle recruiting where you're going after the talent. And it's really strict with the government because the government's very strict with their requirements. So if they're asking for, let's say, a bachelor's degree and 7 years experience, that's exactly what they want. They're not going to take someone with an associate's and 7 years. They want that bachelor's and the 7 years.
Yeah, and I find that's oftentimes one of the more challenging factors and pieces of trying to find great talent is matching those requirements with exactly the background and experience of top talent and people that are out there on the job market. And I often find that those government requirements, those labor category definitions are so specific that it almost looks like it might be wired for somebody. It might be out there for somebody that they already have in mind. How often do you find that you're able to actually find the person that they have in mind?
Yeah, that's critical because a lot of times the requisition, the proposal, the RFQ will already be shaped for somebody that they had in mind, like you mentioned, Chelsea. It might be one company, might be 2 companies. And so I think in our space, in the GovCon space, it's critical to have as much as intelligence as you can before going into it, like knowing the client. Now, if you don't know the client, you're going at it blind, then certainly it's almost like you have to meet those requirements line by line. And like I said, if the company has enough intelligence on this particular contract, on the particular RFQ, then the recruiter, and I've been part of teams where the recruiting teams have been excellent and we're able to really pinpoint what the government is asking for based on what BD is telling us, based on what Capture is telling us, based on what someone on the ground, a program manager is telling us, a project manager is telling us. And so we can really find that one individual that they're really looking for. Fortunately or unfortunately, in the GovCon space, we've all seen it where these requirements, like you said, they just seem like they're shaped out for one specific company or one specific individual. But I think things are changing slowly in that space. I've seen it to where now I'm not a former recruiter, once a recruiter, always a recruiter, but now I have my own government contracting company where I'm on the other side now going after this work. And if I don't have the intelligence on a particular contract, I can always kind of pinpoint where they want to go with it. But the government now is opening it up more for competition for other companies rather than just shaping it for one or two, if you will.
That's optimistic, and I hope that is very much the case. Absolutely. I think a lot of our audience is going to be thrilled to hear that that's your take on it, for sure. How often do you find that people you mentioned earlier being able to sign some folks on, I think what I typically call contingency. So contingent upon win. Say you need that person, but only if you win the contract. How often is that attractive to folks that are in the job market? Back in my day, working with my parents' company, we did that all the time. It was a fantastic way to go about getting the talent that you needed in the proposal and getting it into the bid to make sure that you met those requirements, but you weren't on the hook for having a billable position, if you didn't have the contract to bill it to. So it was one of those interesting two-sided coin situations where it's great if you have them and if they're available, but if they aren't interested or if the contingency position doesn't appeal to them, then you end up in a use or lose position when it comes time to bring them on. Are people still open to that?
I think transparency is key from the beginning. Like you said, like you have to be able to let them know this is not an active, fully funded position, but also building that bench of particular skill sets in order to bring them on maybe 3 months down the road when you have another contract that they may be a fit for, not necessarily that first outreach that you did to them. But also there are different things that in the talent attraction world, recruiting world, that you can do to keep these individuals engaged and maybe keep the name of your company. For example, sending them newsletters, sending them updates on their particular skill sets. Now you got to have the resources and the time to do these sort of things, but I think it's part of an investment that comes back to you eventually because these individuals, their skill sets meet what you're looking for, what you're selling to the government. And I think folks are out there right now, again, if they are educated and have worked in the government contracting space, I think a lot of them do understand that it's a matter of time. The government does work slower than we would like them to. And so if one opportunity doesn't work, I think that they understand that, hey, the next one may. It may not, but I think keeping them engaged and building that bench is critical so that we're not more of a reactive organization rather than you become a proactive organization. And now you're not scrambling with a month left in the proposal and you're thinking, I need these 5 skill sets that I have no idea where to find. Versus if you just had them somewhere in your pipeline and you're engaging with them, whether it's once a month or anything like that, then they have the name of your company in their mind and they can say, okay, I remember this guy. I think that's important, engaging with them and proactively building that bench.
Yeah, keeping them in your circle, if you will, to make sure that they are not forgetting about you and to make sure that they are still interested in working with you. I'm sure that's got to be a motivating factor for folks when they're looking into these contingent type things. How do you go about finding cleared people? This was a discussion that I had on a LinkedIn the other day with some folks, which was there's no cleared people. Hiring for cleared people is so hard to do. I think, is that true? Do you find it hard? Are there enough cleared people out there?
They're definitely out there, but it'll depend on the level of clearance to me. If you want a public trust, if you want maybe a secret, it may not be as challenging, but anything above that certainly will be, because when you're dealing with public trust or a NACI clearance, sometimes the customer may even go through the process of getting them cleared because it's not going to take that long. It may take 3 months or something like that, or maybe a little bit less. But if you're dealing with a top secret or above, then that's when the challenge really comes in. And then in the particular skill sets, these individuals are often in skips during the day. So you can't even give them a call from 9 to 5. You got to figure out, okay, maybe send them an email now, send them a text, and then call them up at 5:30, 6 o'clock when I know they'll be on the road. And it takes time. It's a challenge, that a lot of GovCons go through if they're in the cleared space, especially in the high level clearances. It's definitely a challenge. They're out there, but everyone knows once you're in this space of high level clearances, it's a really nice space to be in. It certainly comes with its challenges, but you have dedicated recruiters and staffing individuals that focus on these particular skill sets. I know plenty of recruiters that all they do is recruit cleared technical folks from top secret SEI and above, and they already have that professional network in their pocket, if you will, because they're really good at keeping in touch with them. And it's the advantage of the other individuals as well, the candidates, to interact with the recruiters, because who knows more than the recruiters about what opportunities are coming down the road. So yeah, they do exist. They're out there. Definitely. It's just a lot harder to engage and connect with them.
Now, do you find that cleared folks are more focused on, and this is just my personal curiosity, are they more focused on like compensation and benefits packages than your average just engineer or regular hire? Do you have to incentivize cleared folks more?
I've run into a little bit of both, but I think once you get to the higher level clearances, I think they're already going to be making substantially more than a lot of folks that don't have the clearance but the same skill set. But the programs that they work on are so interesting, so fascinating. A lot of times they're working on national security stuff that the money comes with it, but I think it's about the mission for a lot of them. Of course, there are some that all they want is the money, but I've come across the majority of them, they really do focus on what the mission is because the work is so cool. I know maybe the very general and basic information about it. And then, of course, they have to be able to talk to the program officer about what it really is that they're going to be doing. But it's about the mission for a lot of them. Those that really are more about the compensation, I think maybe they're the ones just starting out. Maybe they just got their clearance and they want to be able to make more money. But certainly, I think the money comes with the clearance a lot of times. In the government space, we all know that they don't get in it to be rich, but it's about the mission. And once you have a certain level of clearance, compensation comes hand in hand, in my experience, what I've seen.
That's interesting. And now I'm thinking about folks that aren't cleared. I think there's been all sorts of discussion within the GovCon space of, okay, we can't hire tech people fast enough. And we don't have the ability to hire them away from the big tech companies. We can't hire them away from the Googles and the Amazons. And those companies offer, I think, some cultural things that are a little bit different than what a lot of GovCons have, which is they've got the ping pong tables in the boardroom. They've got catered lunches and dinners. They've got unlimited paid time off. And I don't typically see those benefits or packages coming within the GovCon space. Is that something that you're seeing a shift towards, or what's your philosophy on that in the uncleared space?
Yeah, I think that you have to adapt to the market, right? And I think things are changing so quickly right now that GovCons will have to adapt to that. And like you mentioned, a lot of these larger tech companies, they have those things in their offices, unlimited PTO. Now, it's a little bit trickier with the government because of their requirements and their certain projects, cleared work, they may not be able to offer what the private sector may be able to offer, but adapting accordingly, I think, is key, especially now that things are changing so quickly with AI implementation that's not going away. It is going to change how we live, how we work, and their ability to adapt is going to be key. And I think we're seeing that right now. I think you look on LinkedIn 5 years ago, and you would rarely see a CEO in t-shirt and jeans posting selfies and talking about this, that, and the other. But now you see that all the time nowadays. CEOs are getting younger in the GovCon space. I think the culture is changing and adapting a little bit to adapt to the market. And so the government will have to adapt a little bit to that as well, because again, as government contractors, we have to go by what the government says, right? So we have our own culture internally, but also is according to what the government dictates, because a lot of our FTE are not in our offices. They are on site at the government location. So they have to adapt to their culture, which government culture sometimes is not as quote unquote fun as anybody else would imagine. So
yeah,
it's a tricky world for sure, but adaptation, I think, is key to that.
Do you see the government taking a shift in the direction of having a more engaging and I don't want to say enjoyable, but a more engaging and enjoyable culture for folks that are on site?
I think so. That may not happen in the next 12 months, but I see changes here and there. For example, DoD now has their own chat GPT. I forget what they call it. And so they're adapting to the market as much as they can. I think certain sections of the government can adapt more than others. When you're talking in the three-letter agencies in Virginia and Maryland, I don't know that they can adapt fully, of course, but of course,
Sure.
like the maybe certain other agencies, right? They may be able to adapt a little bit more to attract that top technical talent from the private sector. Like you mentioned, you made a great point about private large tech companies having the extremely talented individuals. Now, how do we get those to the government arena? So I think I see it little by little, and I think it will happen, but it'll be by sectors. Like different agencies can adapt more than others.
And that's particularly interesting. I think that's been a conversation that's been ongoing for probably 10, 15 years now. That it used to be that the government was attractive for the mission focus, patriotism that you can show, the ability to contribute to the overall economy in the community. And nowadays, folks, that's all good, but if you don't have some attractive cultural features within your organization that have some motivation and some drive to bring people in, it becomes a challenge. It's hard to bring on that top tech talent that's getting paid top dollar at Google, Amazon, name the big tech company, and now has to figure out the best way to move in the next 2 years and to get their next position because they're trying to climb that ladder. So I think that's an interesting conversation for sure.
And so does it become then the responsibility of the government contracting company, if the government can't adapt, then you as the GovCon adapt somehow, some way? I know that some of your people may be on site, but get them over to the corporate office, get some events going on and adapt accordingly. So if the government can't do it, then maybe it's up to the GovCons to adapt. And I see that happening. Like I said, I see a lot of younger CEOs, a lot of individuals now, even from the big companies. I've seen the other day, I forget who it was, but someone posted in selfie in jeans in the beach talking about, hey, we just won this award. And you wouldn't see that 5 years ago. And so now I think they're trying to go toward that a little bit more.
Yeah, that's my hope. I think that there could be a lot of value in a distinct shift away from the buttoned up blazers and ties that you typically used to see within the government space. Now, you've mentioned a couple of times AI, Chat GPT. What impact is that having on the GovCon recruiting space?
Just like everywhere else, I think it is having a big impact. And there's sort of those who love the change and are adapting to it once again, those who are fighting it, those who are saying AI won't replace us. And I'm of the boat, I'm right in the middle. Like, in my opinion, you either use it or you let it use you. And I think it's critical to learn how to use AI accordingly as a sidekick, as an advisor, but not let it do absolutely everything for you. I think the majority of us know how to detect potential AI content, right? We know, we see the little things here and there, and we're like, yeah, that's definitely Chat GPT. But I think there are certain tools, and as in the recruiting world and the staffing world, and not just that, BD or everywhere else, I think you have to learn prompts and how to give it the right prompts so that you get the information that you need, and then you use that accordingly. As far as, for example, in the staffing world, how I would use AI would be using different tools within ChatGPT to give me information on market data for particular skill sets that I'm looking for. If I'm looking for a systems engineer with a PSS CI in the Colorado area, then I would utilize AI to let me know what that market looks like. And there are different tools that you can use, and then providing that data to the hiring managers, providing that data to the recruiting directors in a way that not just asking ChatGPT to type it up, copying and pasting and sending it over, because then you're setting yourself up for failure there. Because what if a question comes back and you have no idea what the content is because you didn't even type it, you didn't even think of it. And so I think it's critical to know how to use it and not let it use you in a way that you're so afraid that it's going to replace you. It might replace you if you're not actually doing the work. So I think it's important to know how to use it nowadays.
Yeah, and you mentioned if you're not actually doing the work, and I think that's a key point in not only proposal world where we've heard ChatGPT and AI is taking over writing of proposals, but also in spaces like resumes and resume reviews and resume creation. Have you found that there's been a surge of folks that are leveraging an LLM or an AI tool to craft their resume? And then follow up to that, if so, are these candidates actually what their paper says that they are? Can they actually do it? Are they able to talk the talk and walk the walk?
Yeah, this is fascinating right now in the recruiting world because you see it more and more. And like I said earlier, if you're able to detect what AI, Chat GPT generated content looks like, then it's easy for you to say, wow, this individual didn't type any of the resume. And I've seen that a few times. A lot of times I do give people a chance and I'll still reach out and see what they're about. So like you mentioned, to see if they actually know the work. And then we've all heard of this, even during interviews, they're being asked a question and they have their audio thing set up to where ChatGPT immediately answers it for them. So it's crazy what's going on. And I've seen videos where I think an individual didn't even have his camera on and they were going through the interview and then they asked him to turn the camera on and he just panicked and he said, give me a couple minutes, please, because he wanted to get everything set up. And so I think, again, they're letting the technology use them because eventually it's going to catch up to you. You may get lucky here and there, may actually land a job doing that, but then once you get that gig, what are you doing? Do you actually know it? And so it's fascinating right now seeing that. But to me, if you're able to detect that, it's easy for you to see it as a recruiter in the staffing world. It's critical for you to be able to notice that because a lot of resumes are going through it. Folks think that recruiters, when they're reviewing resumes, that they're not even reviewing it. They think it's just an AI review. So they want to AI proof the resumes, which is insane to me. I think 90% of recruiters actually review the resumes themselves. They may have some AI tools here and there, but for the most part, recruiter, a human, is actually reviewing these resumes.
That is such a relief to hear. I think that there's a lot of concern out there amongst folks that there is no one looking at my resume. It's just getting blocked by a filter because it doesn't have the right keywords or it might not have the specific tag or code. I've heard of people putting basically clear text or blanked like white text in the background of their resume and then writing their resume over it just to make sure that they include those fundamental keywords that are necessary. These things I just never would have thought of from a candidate perspective are they're trying to do to get through the system any way they can. So I think that's absolutely hopeful to hear for folks that there is somebody actually looking at their resume and that they're actually getting considered by somebody who's human.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's tough in this market because there's so much competition because of that. And people want to be on top of the list. And so they do exactly what you mentioned. And because you hear that everything is AI now. So yes, a lot of applicant tracking systems have AI built into them. But the bottom line is the recruiter, the human, will review the resumes. Now, let's say if a recruiter's got about 100 plus applicants and resumes to sort through, they may just get to the top 20, the first 20 that applied. And if they find 5 or 10 that are good, then they'll just stop right there because time just won't allow it. And then they may or may not utilize AI to review the rest. But I think the majority and the good companies really are staying with that human touch. Let's have a human actually review these resumes and not just search for keywords AI generated. Absolutely. I think it's key. And it's all based out of fear, right? So folks want to be noticed. It's a competitive marketplace where a lot of folks are applying. And so they want to be noticed. They want to do everything possible to be noticed using AI because they think no other person is reviewing their information. And so it's scary. It can be tough for candidates to feel as though I got to get an AI proof so that someone can actually give me a call back. And I think there are companies that do that. They have just AI looking at it, but it's a vast minority, I think. The majority, they have humans looking at it and reviewing it.
Now, I'm curious about this too. Do you find LinkedIn is being used more heavily for recruiting folks? And does that kind of hand in hand go with having to have your LinkedIn profile shined up and keyworded, if you will?
100%. I think that is very critical. And you see a lot of times, I don't want to say just tech folks, all kinds of skill sets. Sometimes they may not have their LinkedIn profile updated. They just have the picture, they have a little bit of the title, and that's about it. And recruiters, they will absolutely look at the LinkedIn profile. There are different hacks and different ways in which recruiters look for talent, because the real advanced sourcers and recruiters, they don't just post a job and then they wait for candidates to apply. They actually go out and look for individuals. Sometimes they look for people who don't want to be found. And how do they do that? Use different hacks in terms of how can we view as many LinkedIn profiles as we can that match a particular skill set. And that's what we're going to do. So we go to LinkedIn, we go to different, whether it's GitHub for technical folks, Stack Overflow, what other marketing associations, whatever it may be, but we're looking at profiles. And LinkedIn is one of the top places that recruiters will go to because it is the number one professional site. And so keeping that profile up to date, not just up to date, but actually learning about the LinkedIn algorithm, I think is key, because if you know the algo, you know what keywords may pop up, then you put that in your LinkedIn profile. That, I think, is where you can utilize AI and ChatGPT. Give it the correct prompts, see what the algorithm is like. And I think there is the 2025 LinkedIn Insights that came out. I forget who had it on LinkedIn, but that's out there. You can even look at that and figure out how to appropriately build your LinkedIn profile according to your skill set. So that way you get a lot more views.
And I hope people are starting to come around to the fact that LinkedIn is critically important when you're looking in the professional scene and you're looking to get a job. It's not Facebook, it's not Instagram, it's not X. It's really a platform for you to showcase your professional skill sets and your capabilities. And especially for folks that are just coming out of the government and transitioning from military service, I think they don't necessarily recognize that LinkedIn is so widely and heavily used by talent, by recruiters, by companies, and ultimately by the professional world to hopefully find folks that are qualified and that are capable of doing things and being able to find those new hires. So I think having a strong LinkedIn profile and leveraging any skill set, any tools that you can to be able to make sure you're maximizing your presence on LinkedIn is really important, because I think we've moved away from the Craigslist era of classified ad job postings.
100%. Yeah. And you bring up a good point about government individuals now coming out into the other side of the field because of what went on early on with this administration, which so many folks were impacted by it. And you see an influx of individuals on LinkedIn that are open to working, right? Former government employees now open to work. A lot of GovCons targeting these individuals because of the knowledge that they bring to the table. But when you go to their profiles, like you mentioned, it's it's a bare minimum information on there.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe reaching out to individuals, my suggestion to those people would reach out to some recruiters that you see online. A lot of recruiters won't mind giving you free advice on what to do and how to really build up that profile, because there's so many talented individuals that came out of the government that are now still looking for work.
And that brings up a great point. People who are maybe not necessarily sure about how they're being viewed, or they're really not comfortable if their profile is optimized or if they're being sought out, can they come ask you for tips and information and tricks?
I would love that, 100%. In fact, I've done that before where I dealt with individuals coming out of the Army, how to civilianize the resumes, right? Because even the resumes are so full of military and government jargon, recruiters aren't even going to look at your resume because there are 0 keywords on there that we're looking for outside of government. And so I used to help individuals do that coming out of the military, civilianizing their resumes, the terminologies, because they have a lot of these folks coming out of the military, they have fantastic leadership ability. They've led combat troops, they've led battalions, but they have these jargon in their resumes, these keywords that don't even exist in our world. And so unfortunately, we're not even looking at their profiles or their resumes. So 100%, there are plenty of folks out there, including myself, that are more than willing to help any of them coming out of the government and assisting them in finding that right opportunity for sure.
And if they want to be a part of the talent pool that you pick from, how do they go about doing that?
The talent pool, meaning?
The potential candidates that you're providing for other companies, or even bringing on yourself as a government contractor.
I think definitely networking, right? I've gotten messages on LinkedIn from government folks who just say, hey, I'm looking for a job. Can you help me? Because they see staffing and recruiting in my profile. So essentially, here's the misconception. I think that some individuals believe that recruiters are there to find candidates jobs. That's not really the case. The case is recruiters are there to find the talent to fill for the organization. Right? The job of the recruiter is to find the right skill set, not necessarily to find jobs for the candidates. Now, there are headhunters out there that provide that service 100%, and you can go on websites like Upwork or something else and pay them an hourly basis or pay them a retainer where they will look for jobs just for that individual, but it has to be on an individual basis. And so that would be one way for sure. Another way, again, is just to network, but do it professionally and diplomatically. Understand that a recruiter is not necessarily going to be working just for you, right? The recruiter is working for the company, and his or her job is to fill the position. And so I think reaching out to them with, let's say, your particular maybe 4 bullet points of what your skill sets may be, or if you just really don't know and reach out for help, send me a message and say, I have no idea how to do my resume. Can you please help me out? Sometimes I love those individuals because they're straight up and they're honest with you. And so I can work with them.
And that's a fantastic offer and really helpful information. I think I probably wasn't differentiating between recruiters and headhunters in that way. So making sure that you're aware that you're not the only person that's in their Rolodex, and you're not the only person that they're looking at or necessarily looking for. I think it is a key differentiator there, and making sure you're aware of what sort of resource that you're working with. I know you're active on LinkedIn. Folks can find you there, right?
Yes, 100% Al Vega. I think if you search me, it might come out as Al V, but you'll find me there. Bald guy with a mustache.
And then how do folks get a hold of you if they're looking to recruit for their next government contracting project? If they need a bench of folks that maybe you can help them find, how do they reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Chelsea. I think LinkedIn is absolutely the best way. As you mentioned, I'm active on there. Like I said, I'm sort of a former recruiter, and I have my company, but I'm always a recruiter. So I'm always on LinkedIn. It's a place where you have to be if you're in my world. And so that would be a very good way to get a hold of me, is right there on LinkedIn. Send a message. I check them. I'm not the type that will ignore the messages. I have 0 new messages right now, not because no one writes me, but because I actually read them and reply. So for sure.
That's an empty inbox goal that I have for 2026 for sure. It's making sure I'm getting to all those messages, which sometimes there's quite a lot. So that's a fantastic offer for folks. If you need to staff your next project, if you're looking to get folks that are contingency, if you're trying to build out your bench of talent, definitely reach out to Al. And Al, this has been a fantastic conversation. I appreciate your time and all the insights that you've shared with us today.
No, thank you. I really appreciate it. And you as well. I've heard your podcast before, and you drop a lot of good knowledge and information on the industry. So thank you as well.
I hope you have a great rest of your day. And I would love to get you back on as soon as the transition slows down from GovCon industry to get your insights as to how the market's changing.
Anytime. Thank you so much, Chelsea. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Al. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of GovCon Unscripted with your host, Chelsea Roberts. Do you have a GovCon story or need guidance in government contracting? Connect with Chelsea on LinkedIn to be a guest on the show or to enhance your business strategy. Don't forget, your network is your net worth. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with your growing GovCon community.